Welcome to this talk. I'm setting up this series of methodological talks and workshops at the NUS, and I'm very happy to already have first guest. Thanks to Utrecht as well for arranging this. So I'm very happy to introduce Gilad Feldman. Gilad works at the University of Hong Kong, assistant professor in the areas of social psychology, judgment decision making. And in addition to that, Gilad is a very active member in the community for improving psychological science, in which he does a lot of work in promoting open science, meta science, district reports, replication studies, things like that. He leads the core team for collaborative open science and meta research, which is a team of over 70 early career researchers from all around the world and over 400 students from Hong Kong, aiming to practice and promote best practice in open science and meta research. And the particular focus of this team is to complete a mass-scale replication project of over 120 classical studies in decision-making and social psychology. So today he will present more on this and his work in peer community image reports, and also on how you can be involved and how this might be interesting for you as well. But thanks a lot for joining.
Yes, thank you.
And,
thanks for having me. It's great that I had the opportunity. It was a last-minute visit to Singapore, so I kind of rush. Who wants to meet and talk about open science? And usually I don't get a lot of replies, but it's nice that somebody from the core team is here. And I know Joe, Sasha, I met very briefly in SIPS. If you haven't been to SIPS, it's an amazing conference. But now hopefully I'll get to sit down and talk to faculty and students to talk about open science. So I'm going to be here the whole day. If there's something here that's appealing to you and you want to discuss this, I know sometimes students are scared for some reason to talk to professors. Please don't be. So the whole point of this team is for us to empower students and early career researchers. Some of my students are as early as second year undergraduate. So we work with and publish with students aiming to get as many people as possible to do open science work. So we do a lot of things. Some universities are very interested in me presenting what I do in judgment decision making, and it's about the theoretical contribution and, where are you in the literature? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about something that might be a little bit technical, but is what I think is the future of science. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. I just want to say, in the spirit of open science, all the slides are downloadable, so you can scan this QR code, or the link is always going to be here on the bottom right. And then I'm going to make everything available on YouTube and OSF. So if you're missing something, you want to go and have a look, please do. There's also lots of hidden slides, so I'm going to go through these very quickly. But if you want any other information, you can always go and look at that. Plus, everything is on YouTube, so you can go and have a look at YouTube. Everything is on OSF, including my teaching materials and how I do all these things with undergraduates. So if you are teaching a course or TAing a course or whatever it is in your future career, you're just welcome to take whatever it is that we do. So I'll start from the very obvious. It's just like a slide that is needed. So we're facing a lot of challenges. Just came out of a pandemic. World is going through all sorts of things. Climate change and all sorts of things that we have to overcome. And in order to overcome those, we need credible, optimized science. And gosh, what a mess we had in the pandemic. Oh my God, we did not expect this. You would think that the psychologists would expect all that was going on. But really, we had no clue just how wrong we are about the psychology of human nature. And everything came out in the pandemic. So what is science? How to do credible science? How to get people to work with us towards credible science? So my point here is to endorse and promote open science. For a very long time, I've been going around the world. Last 5 years ago, I was last in NTU, and I remember the talk there. People were not with me on this. It was at the business school, and people were like, why do we need this? Everything works, we're on track. So I needed to promote this, but I no longer need to do this because UNESCO is with me now. So last year, UNESCO is coming March, 2 years ago already, March 2022. And now the question is not do we need open science, but how to do open science as big, as fast as possible. Keeps on going. So G7, when they meet, suddenly they talk open science, which is very strange to me, science and technology. The G7 will promote the fair practices in open science. So with all that's going on in the world, we understand that science is a priority. So the aim of this talk is to present to you something called a registered report. So we'll talk about what is a registered report, how it differentiates from a pre-registration, and then what is this registered report 2.0 peer community in registered report, which is a complete revolution, and what I've been aiming to take all of the team in order to do as many of that. So we've wrapped up over 25 of those and keep going strong. So just to align us all together about the issues that we aim to solve with registered reports. So 2015, Chris Chambers wrote this 7 Deadly Sins of Psychology. We thought it's a social psychology problem, but it's not. Now we already know from cancer biology, from many other fields, economics and so forth, that this is a science problem. So we've got all these biases that are inherent in the way that we do peer reviews. We've got outcome bias, confirmation bias, publication bias, hindsight bias. So just looking at the results already creates a bias in what it is that we aim to publish. So if we see p-value lower than 0.05, then hooray, this is a great finding. If not, put it in the file drawer, right? If we do replications, a failed replication, why are you better than who published this originally? So reject. If it's a successful replication, it's like, we knew this all along. It's already published. Why do we need you? Right. So all these come into play. And when we look at this cycle, we understand that in every step of the way, we have challenges. Before, we didn't know whether this is something to be concerned about, but now we have meta science. So we've been coding the way that we've been doing science in order to see some of the challenges. And we've started somewhere around 2011. In social psychology, we had some challenges. So for example, when we start generalizing, generating and specifying a hypothesis, then we move on to designing the study, then we collect the data, then we analyze the data, then we interpret the data, then we publish. In each step of the way, we have meta-scientific evidence showing us that there's a problem. So right now, I think last year, Simin Vazir and the team in Melbourne came out with a paper showing that the replication ratio, so how many replications are published in top tier journals, it's 0.2. So not 2%, not 20%, 0.2. It's only 1 in like 1,000 papers. So this is consistent, not just in psychology, but also across the sciences. Generally, we have a big problem up until 2015, but still, if you look at some top journals in different disciplines, very low statistical power. I am in a psychology department at HKU, neuroscience, educational, bringing babies in, having to scan very small samples, 10 to 20 in each study. Can we draw conclusions from this? If we see a statistical p-value lower than 0.05, but what does that mean? Selective reporting, so now we call this questionable research practices or p-hacking. We have a lot of evidence that people are doing this in big numbers. And then all of the published findings are positive. So we rarely see a p-value that's higher than 0.05. So a lot of meta-scientific evidence here. So sometimes people have some discussion that they want to do with me. What does this say? Do we really have a crisis? What kind of crisis? Is this a replication? Is this a theory? Is this a measurement? What do we need to do? Let's just say for now that if you don't agree with me, at the very least, what we can do is try to improve things. So even if science is doing well, we would like to help it do even better. So that if we have a vaccine for a pandemic, or if we want to implement some policy in Singapore, then we really want to know whether this is based on credible evidence. So our philosophy should be as scientists that we really care about what the question is and the rigor of how we look at the methods and how we pursue testing this question. But it shouldn't be based on the results. So for example, if we have a vaccine, regardless of whether the outcome is it works or doesn't work, we really want to know. And we don't just want to know the things that work. So for example, if we have 100 test trials of a vaccine and only 2 worked, we don't just publish the 2 and say vaccine works and everything is okay, but we also want to know about the 98 that did not work, right? We want to see everything, both that work and didn't work. So the results should not determine whether this is published or not. We just need to see the entire picture so that we can make an informed decision about whether to implement this vaccine and how. So the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. We have a lot of biases. We understand science might be perfect, but we are human and have a lot of things to be fooled by. And sometimes we think that we're very clever, but I study judgment decision making, so I demonstrate hindsight bias, outcome bias, publication bias, confirmation bias to people, showing that there's evidence that we're biased. So we need to know how to overcome this in order to get science to work for us. So my first claim is register reports are the future of science. I will assume that you know a little bit about what a pre-registration is, but a pre-registration is before you collect the data, you make a plan as detailed as possible, and then you go to a public website and you're able to upload or write that plan. And then once you're done, you publish this, and then it has a timestamp. And that cannot be changed. That is frozen. That is there for eternity. And then you collect the data, and you're able to show reviewers that you collected the data after you pre-registered. And then what you need to do is to document how you followed the pre-registration plan and all the deviations that you had from that. So that's a pre-registration. What is a register report, and how is a register report different than that? So register report is relatively new. Chris Chambers, who we'll talk about a lot. So the person from Sins of Psychology or Science, the Deadly Sins. In 2013, he was invited to be an editor in Cortex, which is relatively a good journal. Like neuroscientists in my department who are obsessed with impact factors and number of publications really care about Cortex. This goes to show that if you're invited to be an editor there, it's a big deal. So when he was invited, he said, will you be an editor? He said, I see all these problems, upcoming book in 2015. I don't want to do the same kind of publications as everybody else. I want to do a new kind of publication, and that is a register report. So Cortex was the first one, 2013. And aside from just doing a pre-registration, what Chris Chambers added in addition to that is that you take the pre-registration, and instead of by yourself going to a public website and putting a timestamp, you take the plan and you submit that to the journal. And then you get a peer review over the pre-registration. And then you have a back and forth with the reviewers. What should I improve? What should I change? And then once everybody agrees, you, the reviewers, and the editor agree that this is the best plan possible in order to pursue the research question that you have, then the journal gives you something revolutionary called an in-principle acceptance. And that means that regardless of the outcomes, you have not collected data yet. Regardless of the outcome, you're going to be published. So even if the p-value is higher than 0.05, if it's a failed replication, if it's not according to your expectations, that's completely okay. It's still going to get published. So here, the emphasis is on the rigor, on the methods, on getting the best science possible, rather than looking at the results. Is that did this confirm what it is that we expected or not? So pre-registration powered by peer review and in-principle acceptance. So this is the traditional publishing model. I think it's completely broken. I try as much as possible not to submit that way anymore. So what happens typically is that we develop the idea, we design the study, we collect and analyze data, we write the report, and then we submit this to the journal. But then typically what happens, my rejection rate, especially with replications, was 70 to 90%. Just imagine the waste and the frustration every time you submit to the journal, and then 2 months, 4 months, and then they give you back, revise, and then 2 months, 4 months, and then finally reject. Why? Because all sorts of problems, p-value higher than 0.05. Maybe they're part of this camp and not part of this camp, and they don't like that I'm in this camp, so they reject this. Editors have all sorts of things like improving the impact factors and media attention and all that. So they see the results and they adjust whether to accept the paper based on that. We do not want that. This is exactly the broken system that we're trying to fix in order to get science right. So this is what Chris Chambers was promoting. So you develop the idea, you design the study, you write the pre-registration, and then you submit this to the peer review. And the only thing that happens in the first stage is an evaluation of whether you're really doing good science. So your hypothesis, your methods, are you well powered? Can you really detect this effect? So if you have small samples, this is no longer good and not acceptable. So making sure that it's up to the standards. Once you have that, everybody agrees together, you have an in-principle acceptance, and then you proceed to the data collection and the analysis. And in the stage 2, you don't have everything once again starting from scratch, but the evaluation is, did you follow the pre-registration plan? Or if you deviated, did you document all the deviations appropriately? And when you made some evaluation of that, when you have some claims, are they aligned with all that you did? So stage 2 is usually very, very brief if you really followed the plan. So from this broken model with all the meta-scientific evidence about all the things that are wrong, now we can see that in registry reports, all of this is suddenly like green. All of those disappear because we don't have any publication bias, right? Many registry reports, they promote replication because we want to know whether something is solid or not. Eliminates no need for questionable research practices. You don't need to push the p-value to be lower than 0.05 because you're going to get published regardless of that. And then you can ensure all sorts of things like high power and so forth. So it started with Cortex and a few others that Chris Chambers was an editor of, Royal Society of Open Science and all those. And then suddenly started to kind of go up. We were hoping this would really be exponential, but COVID kind of like took this a little bit slower. But by now we have 300, 350 journals that do registry reports, which is amazing. So whatever your discipline is, whatever part of psychology or field that you're in, you should have a journal, a few good journals that now do registry reports. In social psychology, used to be unheard of that they'll do registry reports, but now we have editors both in JPSP, Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, and in Psychological Science. Simin Vazir is suddenly an editor there. It's like an unbelievable change in the leadership in one of the top empirical journals in terms of reputation. So we've got editors that are promoting registry reports in their journals. If you want to know which journals are doing this, so there's a list of journals. So you can just like press on this link. I don't know if it will open or not, but I'll do this. So first you can check that link in order to see this and this. So you can see in your discipline, so we also do registry reports for meta-analysis. We do registry reports for different kind of things. So you can see, are they supporting meta-analysis? Yes or no? What kind of, I don't know if you can see this, but what kind of scientific discipline are you in? Maybe you're in business or ecology or economics. So this is like the most comprehensive list that we're doing right now. And the Center of Open Science is working in order to get this updated all the time. Do they require APC to pay or not? So this is one thing that I would like you to, if you're interested in registry reports, check out. The other thing is that we're trying to get some feedback about who does the best registry reports. Yeah, so this is the website for the registry reports. Which one should we do? So you can filter this for only those that do a meta-analysis. But then we also have a website that looks at feedback. So if we go to the dashboard, you can see that we're trying to collect as many as possible. Some of them have like 612 people who did registry reports giving feedback. So not a lot of us doing registry reports, but the ones that do are pretty passionate about this. So we want to get others to improve. So you can see like on top in terms of speed, you've got peer community in registry reports, which we'll talk about. We've got Cortex and Royal Society of Open Science. So it seems like wherever Chris Chambers has been doing this for a long time, it's pretty speedy and very high quality. So in terms of quality, you've got peer community like on the top, RSOS, Cortex. So really Chris Chambers has been doing this the longest. So it makes sense that quality is, and if you want to know what is quality, what does it mean? Quality. So you've got like a lot of different indicators and different comments that people will give. How was the experience of getting peer review in a registry report. I took Chris Chambers' pyramid. So this is the original pyramid for what I think the impact of registry reports is. So right now when policymakers come to me and they say, we heard about this new amazing study that came out in psychological science. We want to implement this for all of Singapore or Hong Kong. Tell us how to do this. I'm like, hold on. Let's just stop for a second and evaluate what happens in this study. So for me right now, status quo research with no pre-registration, no open data and materials, for me, this is like, hold on, this is just like preliminary evidence, barely worth a mention. You shouldn't be teaching your students. You shouldn't go to media. You definitely should not implement policy on this. It gets a little bit better when you have exploratory open science. So maybe you didn't pre-register, but you shared all your materials, your data, and your code. That's already a lot better because we can evaluate a little bit of that. Higher than that is confirmatory open science. So it is pre-registered. You're confirming something, hypothesis that you pre-registered in advance with this public timestamp. But even higher than this is registry reports, where peer review over pre-registration with an in-principle acceptance ensures that there's no publication bias and that it's well-powered and it's aligned with your hypothesis and your methods. And then at the end, we're getting there, but it's going to take another decade, is a meta-analysis of registry reports. So once we have many of those, we can aggregate those and say, this is the best evidence that we have, and this is a meta-analysis with no publication bias of registry reports. So I added two more on top of this. I also think that meta-analysis should be registry reports. So a registry report, meta-analysis of registry report. And then I also think that this should be continuously updated. So every time a new evidence comes in, it should just be plugged in automatically into the meta-analysis, and now we have the latest, not a meta-analysis every 10, 20 years. So this is the pyramid that I try to follow when I talk to my students. I talk to policy makers about how to do this. So this is about science, but you might be asking yourself, but I need to get a job. I need to publish in my master's PhD in order to be able to get a postdoc, in order to get a job. What should I do? Because now the incentives are completely against me. I have to survive in the system. Maybe when I'm tenured and associate professor, then I can start doing all your register report stuff. My message to you is that no, register reports are also good for you. There's so many benefits from that. I'll start from the very, very obvious. My rejection rates from journals before register reports was about 70 to 90%, depending on which journals. After we started submitting registry reports, what is the rejection rate? It's zero. There's no reason to reject you. So it's just the waste, all that waste, the time that I spent replying and submitting and all this, no need for that. No one should reject you if it's just a pre-registration plan. If there's a mistake, no problem. Tell me what the mistake is. I'll work on this. Sometimes the reviews that we get from reviewers are so good, they catch mistakes. We correct them. And then we both agree that this is the best plan. And then we proceed to the data collection. So just imagine if we didn't catch this mistake, we collect the data and then it would be rejected, then another data collection. So reviews in registry report just saved us so much time, caught all sorts of mistakes. It's amazing the shift in mindset, because if you're a reviewer on something that's already done, you're just like, your mindset is reject, 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 right? It's like, I want to find flaws. If you're a registered report reviewer, your mindset is, I want to help this do better science. So I'm going to do whatever I can, very positive, constructive feedback in order to boost what it is that you're reviewing. So sometimes I really want to make my reviewers co-authors because they've helped me so much. It's an amazing kind of collaboration between authors, reviewers, and editors. So acceptance rates are just like, in terms of your career, instead of wasting time during your MPhil PhD, just do this as a registry report, and then you're guaranteed to have a publication. It's faster. Some people think registry reports take longer. I'll show you an example where this is not the case. So we do registry reports within 6 months. Now I can show you how that's done. And then also, some people say, in terms of the CV, how do I convince people that registry reports are better? When you have an in-principle acceptance, even before you collected the data, that is a line on your CV. It's a guaranteed publication. So you got an in-principle acceptance over the pre-registration, put it on your CV, and then it just shows people know that when you join them, then you'll get that publication and it will be assigned, affiliated with that university. So it's good for them. In addition, it's much easier to get funding when you have a guaranteed in-principle acceptance from a journal. No risk for the funding agency. They just know that this is going to be published. So instead of, is this valuable or not? Now they already know because there's a signal from the journal that this is accepted. Is there meta-scientific evidence that registered reports are working? Definitely. We're starting to see more and more of that. This is some of the initial evidence um, from Anne and Daniel. So working on all sorts of different things. So when we don't do register reports, the traditional model, our positive rate is above 90%. So 92% are positive results, p-value lower than 0.05. How about register reports? Yeah, it drops to lower than 50. So it seems a lot more aligned with what we would expect from science. Center of Open Science and a bunch of other many labs from around the world kind of evaluated. It's the closest thing that we've had to a randomized control trial. So we took register reports and traditional manuscripts, and we did not tell the reviewers whether this is a register report or not. And we asked them to evaluate the quality in terms of methods, in terms of rigor, in terms of quality of paper, important discoveries. Which one is better? And the reviewers don't actually know if this was a register report or not, but you can see above and beyond, register reports are evaluated to be higher rigor, higher quality, higher importance, and so forth. So we already have a lot of evidence like that. And ongoing right now is another trial, randomized control trial, where we're trying to see the different models and compare between them. So this was very convincing to me. 2 years ago, 3 years ago already, 2021, Chris Chambers was trying to summarize everything that he was doing with register reports. So I strongly recommend this. What I like about this is that it clarifies misconceptions. Some people say, when I do a pre-registration, I cannot deviate. It's a jail. I don't want to be in a jail. I want to be able to explore and do all sorts of things. So for example, it does not hinder your exploratory research. You can explore as much as you want. You just need to be very, very clear about what you pre-registered and what is the exploratory part. So now it allows you to just be better aligned with the science that you've done. So it doesn't limit your creativity. It's not only for single shots. So a lot of misconceptions. So if you have something that you're scared about in registry report and you're saying, this is not going to work for me, I encourage you, go and read this article. It's very, very clear about why this is not the case. So this is registry report. Hopefully by now you can sense that something very important is happening here. But you have some concerns. And I remember I was in Padova. So we did Padova in SIPS last year, but before that, 4 years before that, before the pandemic, I was actually there for an open science workshop, and Chris Chambers was there promoting registry report. And people had a lot of concerns. Like I remember sitting in the audience and just seeing all the early career researchers saying, but this, but that. And Chris Chambers really listened. And then he says, yes, we're working on registry reports 2.0. So just wait. We're going to solve all of your concerns. I was a little bit skeptical, but 2 years later, he really lived up to this. So together with this platform called Peer Community In, they did a special Peer Community In for registry reports that was able to solve a lot of these things. And once this came out, I'm just like, I'm going to do this with every thesis student that works with me. So we're going to implement all of that. Yeah, so this is my second claim. Peer community and registry reports is the most promising direction. What it is that it's an open platform done by the European Union, French government. And basically, it's a preprint platform. So you upload a preprint, and then the peer review is on the preprint. All the peer review is open, citable, available for everybody to see. And now they have a subsection for registry reports. These are some of the benefits that you have. And this is how I'm able to do with my thesis students a whole registry reports within 6 months. So they have something scheduled review. I don't know why they're the first ever to implement this kind of thing, but it's revolutionary. They guarantee peer review within 2 weeks. How do they do this? You have to schedule, this is why it's called scheduled PCIR, scheduled review. So you submit a one-page snapshot saying what it is that your research question is, hypothesis, and general design. The only thing that the snapshot is used is to recruit reviewers. So you submit the 6 weeks before when you want to submit the manuscript. You work on the manuscript. I work with my students or on the replications, and then they go search for reviewers. And they say, reviewers, this is the snapshot. We need reviewers from this, but we need you to reserve the 1 week, 6 weeks into the future. And then everybody just aligns to that date. So you finish your manuscript, you submit this, and they come in and they review this. So 2 weeks, because 1 week is given to the reviewers, and then 1 week is given to the recommender editor and the editorial board to evaluate that this was done accordingly. All of the recommenders, the editors in peer community of registry reports are open science trained. So they have exams in order to make sure before you become a recommender, you have to go through this training. There's a template that ensures that reviewers know exactly how to evaluate things with open science. So just mind-blowing to see the level of reviews that we get from peer community. One of the other things is that all the reviewers are identifiable and citable. So I have an issue when I submit replications because sometimes original authors are really hostile and push back on this. They don't like our replications. So now I can ask peer community that all reviews are identifiable. So they have to be signed. You don't have to do this, but this is a feature that is very important, especially for replications. And why this is good for you is that if you're a reviewer, you can add this to your CV because it's citable. It's something, it's a line that everybody knows that you contributed to this. Some might be scared about this, but I think as long as you're humble, as long as you say, I'm an article researcher, I want to do my best, this is what I know, here's my review, I hope you find this useful. This is actually really good for recruitment. So if you want to come to HKU and you show me that you've contributed to peer community, I'm like, this is amazing. Thank you for contributing to the community. So this shows that you're a community member. Finally, and this is the biggest thing, this is just like mind blowing that we haven't had this before. So what is this community? Why would we care about this? We need to publish in top tier journals with high impact factors that everybody, NUS and HKU cares about. So what's amazing about this community is that once this is endorsed by the community, there is a list of by now over 30 journals that will automatically accept your manuscript for publication with no additional peer review. That is just amazing. So the power shifts from the journals to you. You can decide, do I want to publish with Collabra? Maybe I want to publish with IRSP. So for example, Collabra, Simin Vazir was in Collabra before Psychological Science. She saw that we were some of the first to publish with PCIR. She contacted me. I've never been contacted by an editor saying, would you consider publishing with us? I'm like, yes. So really revolutionary, just to show you some of the journals. So by now Collabra is here. In social psychology, you've got International Review of Social Psychology. You've got like a bunch of them. And this is growing. You can, of course, see Cortex. In addition, they have something called PCIR Interested. So this is journals that are sitting on the side. And whenever they see an endorsement from the community, they say, oh, does this fit with us or not? And then they contact you. So actually, some of these journals have contacted me and say, would you consider publishing with us? But they also like to have their own peer review process. So sometimes, for example, Nature Human Behavior, impact factor 15 something, they want to ensure that this fits with their journal. So it's a large scale enough, has impact. That's completely okay, but sometimes they contact you. So never happened to me before. There are more benefits. I'm gonna go over this. I also implemented something at HKU. We can talk about this later. I just want to show you that this is possible. So we already published 4 of those. So this means stage 2 accepted and then endorsed by a journal. So you can see Collabra is here. This is an International Review of Social Psychology. We also have all of these students. All of these are thesis students that did this as a thesis with me within their 1-year undergraduate or master's thesis. So you can see all the underlying names are thesis students. And then we have this bigger collaborations. I don't know if you can see this, but in my courses, undergraduate courses, students write registry reports. And then I take registry reports, I put them on Twitter, and I say, who wants to collaborate with us? I think this is how Utek kind of like, and I started working together. So Utek was like, oh, I can come over and take over finished stage 1 manuscripts. And then I say, yeah, let's work together. Help us come in, validate everything the students did, integrate this together, make sure that it's publication worthy, and then we submit this together. And you can see that we already have some endorsements from that. And then ongoing, there's like a lot of these that are ongoing. Just like Utek Ikang from Maastricht started to join us. So this is like a summary of what he wrote to us. He learned a lot. This is very pro-open science. You're not alone, and so forth. If you want to see what registry reports look like with my students, how do students do this as early as undergraduate, you can just go and press on any of those. I'll just show you highlights. This is what a recommendation for peer community looks like. I'll just zoom in a little bit. So this is, for example, Chris Chamber. was our recommender in peer community, which is a great honor and privilege. So you can see all of the students working with me in my undergraduate course, and then Ikang, who came as the early career researcher, and this is open to you. We have a lot of those that if you feel like you want to do this, you can become the first author and help us. Christy over here was the teaching assistant, so we credit teaching assistants for their contribution, and then me trailing at the back. I don't know if you know this name. Roger was the editor of Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, so to have him as a reviewer, that's just amazing. And then you can see the recommendation by Chris Chambers about what it is that we did. It gives us the list of eligible journals. Then Collabra, Simin Vazir contacted me and we published this with Collabra. And then you can see everything. You can see how we replied to all of the peer review. You can see the peer review by Roger and Uriel. So everything is open, everything is citable, everything is available for everybody to evaluate. So let's say that this is a COVID vaccine. You don't need to guess. Did Pfizer, Moderna, what did they do? What was the peer review? You just go over there and you are able to evaluate everything openly. So a real revolution. Also, in addition, on the Open Science Framework, you can see that we have every step of the way the snapshot. So if you want to see how to do a snapshot, then the first submission, then the second submission, and you can see how we responded to the reviewers. You can see how the manuscript evolved over time. And then the pre-registrations, the peer community in registry reports, once they endorse your manuscript, they automatically create a pre-registration for you based on that. So you've got the Qualtrics, you've got our simulated data sets and the planned data analysis, you've got everything. So my general takeaway from this is like, once I finished the first year of doing this, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a different kind of science. I am never going back to the previous kind of science. I just want to do as many of those as possible. So very, very positive. I post these kinds of things on Twitter. So if you follow me, but I also collect other people saying, being amazed by this. So it's not just me and the team that's working with me, but all of these people are coming in and saying, both as a reviewer and as an author, we want to do this as much as possible. So if you want to know more from Chris Chambers or the other people in PCIR, lots of videos. Finally, a little bit about this team. 70 is including the students, 40 early career researchers from around the world. So really all the way from China, Japan, all the way to Brazil. People who are working with us. So you can see all the early career researchers. Many of them are masters, PhD students. You've got all of the students that are working with me over the years. About 400 by now, undergraduate students that took my courses. This was the first semester. I just finished doing a PhD course, RPG. So we also have those joining us. So it's a big team. How many did we finish after 5 years? This is a little bit outdated, but we finished about 80 completed with data collection, pre-registered applications, 40 registry reports. But even more important than this is that we do a lot of meta-scientific stuff, and we do many guides and templates. So for example, one of the guides that is about to be, we already have preprints, but about to be published officially, is how to calculate effect size and confidence intervals. Many people get this very, very wrong. If you want to do a power analysis, you need to know how to do this. But we have guides for everything, like Jamovi, JASP, R, Markdown, how to do a power analysis, how to do statistical methods. All of these are collaborative. So actually, if you go in and you add, modify, change anything, you become a co-author. This is how we work in SIPs. This is how we work in open science. All of you can contribute and make something that's a lot stronger. You don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to the students. So there are links over here to undergraduate student Nadia. She's now a PhD student at HKU. She did, during her undergraduate, she did one course with me and one thesis and published both of them. So you can see her talk about her experiences. Cora is a master's student, finally published in SPPS. In addition, if you want to be that early career researcher that takes the lead, you can see Jane came in, Max came in and gave a talk. Hero wrote on psychology today. So lots of ways for you to learn a little bit more about that. Finally, all of the things about this core team are available here with a video of like 3 hours on how to join us, all the opportunities, many things that you can do. You can join us in order to take the lead on registry reports. You can take the lead over completed manuscripts with data analysis, with everything collected. I have about 20 of those left. Or you can take everything that we did and run your own in your own classes. So, for example, the Brazilian team wanted to do the same thing that we're doing at HKU. They're doing with their students. So they're taking everything that we've done, which is shared on the Open Science Framework, translating this to Portuguese and running this in Brazil. And already completed 4 of those and submitted these to journals. So it's nice to see that this is not just HKU. You can implement this successfully in every part of the world. It's just a matter of wanting to work with students, empowering students, bringing in early career researcher, and working with the community through initiatives like peer community or all kinds of guides and templates. So everything that I talked about, I know it was a little bit rushed, but everything is on my website. I am very eager to hear from you and help you to do better science. You can contact me directly with this website. We have updates every 2 months or so where we say what it is that we do in the team, the different guides, templates, the different projects. But in general, we want to hear from you. So don't hesitate. Even if I'm very busy, I will connect you with some of the other early career researchers, and then we can sit together, explore how we can work together in order to do better open science. So hopefully that gives you an idea, and happy to talk to you more about any of this. Thank you.
We have some time for questions and discussions. So if anyone has a question, also online, feel free to raise your real or virtual hand.
Yeah, very good question. So if you go on my Twitter, you'll see that every few months I ask exactly the same question. I'm like, why isn't everybody submitting to peer community and registered reports? And I know that when I teach this to undergraduates, now finished with the RPG, first they ask me, is like, isn't this the way that we did this to begin with? I'm like, I'm really sorry. We created this monster of a system where everything is misaligned. Now we're trying to correct this, but people have weaknesses. We suffer from status quo bias. People are just like in the same kind of way. Things have been familiar for them for 40 years. This is how they've done things in psychology. So realigning, just getting people to know about this, first step, and then getting people to consider this, and then getting people to try this out, and then getting people to actually realign everything that they're doing. It takes a very, very long time. So Center of Open Science, for example, has this pyramid about what is the way to implement open science policies. So first of all, is like make it possible. So at the beginning, we didn't have any platforms for pre-registration. We didn't have PCIRR. So this is just like two years. Then make it easy. Then make it normative. Finally, at the end, it's like make it required. So this is a great empirical question. Actually, with meta science, we should be able to answer this question. What is the impact of registered report on your rate of citations, right? Yeah. Right now, the evidence that we have, which is very preliminary, is that it's at least on par. Sometimes it seems like it's a little bit higher citations of registered reports because it seems like people trust this more. At least the open science community does, so they give this a little bit more credibility. But we don't, like, let's say they're on par. You're definitely not sacrificing anything. What you are sacrificing, and this is the big problem why it's not being endorsed so far, is that the big journals, Science, Nature, PNAS, all of those are very slow to adopt. The highest impact factor, one that has aligned with this, seems to be Nature Human Behavior. Kind of like a recent arrival to the field, but really going. So they're trying different things, but right now the incentives for hiring, funding, promotion are aligned with the top tier journals, and they're not implementing this. So as long as we are not able to align registered reports with those, it's going to be an issue, and it's going to take a very long time. In social psychology, I feel like we're a little bit ahead of the rest. But science is very big. So in the other disciplines, they're not even registering this. I just had a talk where a discussion with somebody from education. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't even know how to get them to do pre-registration. You want them to submit to a registry. We don't even have journals that support us. So hopefully peer community and registry reports will help align some of this. And within 5 to 10 years, hopefully, if we have that, it will empower people enough so that they can make these decisions. In terms of downsides, people have a lot of misconceptions. So I think people have unwarranted fears. They think it will take a very long time. They think there's some kind of a sacrifice in this. So to them, I just say, so maybe don't do all of 100% of your projects as registry reports. Just choose one or work with a student on one, or join one of the teams to just have one project and then compare this to everything else that you're doing. And once you go through that, it's going to be much easier for you to see that this is beneficial. So I think many of this is status quo hierarchy and unwarranted fears. But for me, so far, really no downsides to it. I also see a lot of examples online on Twitter. Sometimes people say, I have a stage 1 in principle acceptance, but actually I don't have funding. Who wants to join me? It's amazing to see the power of collaboration. Suddenly people, I have participants, but I don't have a good research idea. Can I collaborate with you? So suddenly you see everybody starting to work together. In SIPS, this is Society for Improvement of Psychological Science, this year in Africa, in Nairobi, in Kenya. You're very welcome to join us. Suddenly you see people sitting together and working on things where you have different skills. Some people have the funding, some people have the research labs, facilities, some people have the ideas, some people want to work on registry reports. So some people do different aspects and then it brings together in order to get things done. Whereas before you had to do everything, you had to be an expert in every step of the way. You also need to get funding. You also need to promote this. And so now we can work as a community. The other thing that you were asking is about the differences between a pre-registration, just you by yourself, or a registered report. So yeah, so a registered report adds an additional layer of peer review. So basically what happens is that you take a pre-registration and submit this to the journal before data collection. And peer review happens on the pre-registration. So it's not just you by yourself. So there's a chance for you to update and improve your pre-registration. And once everybody agrees on that plan, the big revolutionary thing is that the journal guarantees a publication with an in-principle acceptance. So there's no more publication bias. Whether you find support or don't find support, this is going to get published. If you do this by yourself, you go and you have a published protocol and you collect the data and it's not supported, then you submit this to the journal, then all these biases about outcome bias, hindsight bias, confirmation bias come into play. So this eliminates a lot of that. So basically, registered reports is a pre-registration, a published protocol, plus peer review and in-principle acceptance from the journal, like combined together. Yeah, so for example, from Chris Chambers, so just to be clear, even with so if you submit not a registered report, you submit a regular traditional manuscript, has a pre-registration or doesn't have a pre-registration, you submit this to journal, depending on how high impact or what is it, they have different rejection rates. So for example, I think all psychology departments aim for psychological science. Rejection rate by desk is about 60 to 70%, and then an additional 20% on that after peer review. So about 90% rejection rates in the top journals. Sometimes it goes even further than that. PNAS, Science and Nature, they're like high up. In registered reports, if you think about this, there's no real reason to reject you. So for example, Chris Chambers here in Cortex says that they dropped to less than 10% rejection rates. And the 10% rejection rates for registered reports is just people that did not understand what a registered report is. So mostly technical issues. Because if you don't have these technical issues, if you've met all the requirements of registered reports, and this is aligned with what the journal is looking for, there's no reason to reject you. Because if there's something that the reviewers don't like, they tell you, you revise this, you submit this again, and then they all agree on the plan. So they're helping you with this. So instead of rejection mode, it's more collaboration mode, giving constructive feedback. And only after everybody agrees, only then do you get in-principle acceptance and go into data collection. So it's amazing to see the shift between, the 90+% in Cortex for regular manuscripts to 10% and less in registered reports. So real benefits. You can check some of the websites that I just showed you in order to see the rejection rates from that, or talk to the editors. Editors try and make this available. I think one of the things that Simin Vazir was talking about is transparency about rejection rates for all manuscripts, and then how they handle registered reports as well. That one of the things that PCR does really well is to get authors to consider all of these things before they actually submit. So for example, one of the things that they have is a study design table. it's something, it seems like something very, very simple, straightforward, but they add this. And one of the questions in there is to address the rigor, the research question. What would you do if the research question is not answered? They have all sorts of templates that people can see on how reviewers are going to evaluate them. So if you make everything more transparent and you force people to give you this design template, and in addition, you open up the peer review so everybody can see how others were evaluated, then people do a much better job at getting the first one correctly. So it's not to say that, so when we evaluate rejection rates, when we can see why they were rejected and when we can see why they were not rejected, then suddenly people do a much better job at preparing for this. But one of the things that I have concerns about in comprehensive results and in other journals that implement all these closed peer review is that how would I know? Let's say I'm an early career researcher student. How would I know how to do a better first submission for you? How would I know that comprehensive results really wants me to do it this way and not that way? How would they know about your record as an editor, or what it is that you expect from authors? So what's nice about peer community, you are actually the one that is asking for a set of recommenders of an editors. You can go and you can check their profile. You can go and look at everything that's been submitted, and then you can align and prepare for that. So actually a lot of preparation that I do with my students is go and learn what we submitted before, what goes on in peer community. So I feel like there's all sorts of different tweaks. And what's nice about your claim is that you're worried about this, that please be worried. Please come and check this. We want you to check peer community as much as possible. And now you can do this. You cannot do this with the other journals. But now as an editor, you want to evaluate what peer community is doing, go and see, because everything is open and everything is accessible. So if journals like Collabra, Semir Vazir say, I am willing to endorse automatically with no additional peer review everything that comes from peer community, you can trust Semir Vazir to have gone and went through all the protocols of published peer community in order to see and assess whether this is a valid decision or not. So you can make your own assessment of that. And if you have feedback for the community, say, maybe rejection rates are too low. This is a good feedback. And then please implement 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the kind of feedback that the community is looking for. But then we can work on this together with everything being open and accessible for everybody. I'm really hoping, actually, I contacted the comprehensive results in social psychology and said, please go and sign up. If not as a friendly, automatically, at least as an interested, to evaluate the process with peer community to see how the strength of comprehensive results and peer community can be aligned. Because only working with editors like you who understand registry reports can peer community really live up to the reputation that we aim for in the credibility of this community. No more reason to be frustrated. I don't first failed. I think we should like relabel this into no results. Sometimes no results is not a failure. Actually, we want to know whether this is a no results or not. I have so many things to say about almost every sentence that you, but I'll try and do this briefly because we can go on for like a whole day just talking about that. I'll just say this: 99.999% of the literature right now is focused on innovation. Everybody's doing innovation. Nobody's doing this other thing. Nobody's doing replications. Nobody's doing rigor and methodology and improving measurement and talking about all these other issues. So we need to start like aligning a little bit so that at least, ratio of replications. When I just gave a workshop on this. When I ask people, what do you think the ratio of replications versus novel research should be? People say, 30%, 10%. Right now, the ratio is 0.2%. So we need to like boost this up. In addition, I want to say, one of the biases that we evaluate in judgment decision making is that we're just like one subjective person. You are a very bad evaluator of the contribution of your work. How would you know what your work is worth? It's only with the power of community, by making preprints available, that somebody says, language, learning a language model. They see your research and say, now I can do something with this. You don't know anything about LLM, so how would you know that this is valuable or not? Sometimes I submit stuff to peer community saying, this is the contribution, we're doing a replication of this. And then they're saying, but this is so valuable because this is what we can know from that. And I have so many examples about things that we do in replication. So for example, when we do replications of an article, sometimes it has 4 studies. We run all 4 studies together in a within subject design, a random presentation order. And suddenly you can see consistency between studies in different paradigms. So sometimes through the reviewers telling me what it is that they see that I was blind to, am I able to see just how innovative or some of the things that can be taken from just a replication, just following what other people did in order to bring a contribution to the community. So I am very much in favor. Forget journals. I'm all for just like preprints, make everything available, make others evaluate this publicly, and then together as a community, we need to come up with some solutions in order to assess this and evaluate this to see what the real contribution is.